Another way to make images in our web designs responsive is to play with the background size properties of background images. Let's have a look at how we might do that. A background image is a property of a HTML element. So I'm just going to add a HTML element to our HTML. It's going to be a div. So it's completely empty at the moment. It doesn't have anything in there. Let's give the that div element some visual representation. Let's add some width to it. It's going to be 100%. So I want that. Oops. Let's do that property. Let's target that div, and inside curly brackets we can add property of width to 100%. I'm also going to give that div some height. Maybe make that just 400 pixels. And just so that we can see it, let's add some border. A border width and a style and a color. Now we can see our div on the canvas there. So we can, inside that div, we can place a background image as a property, which is kind of handy, definitely for kind of decorative elements and visual elements in your web design. Let's add a background image now, and we do that by adding the background image property. We need a URL for an image, and then inside that URL we put an actual URL string. Now I'm going to grab a URL for an image from the Assets panel in CodePen, and I'm going to grab an Unsplash image here. This one here. I'm going to grab the full image URL. Alright, so let's copy that into the clipboard, and hopefully when I paste it in here, it's going to add that image into the background. And there we go. It took a second to render it. I suppose it's a pretty large image coming from a different server, but it's added that to the background of that div element. Just drag that down so we can see the whole style rule there. So we've got a div, we've added a width, we've added a height, we've given it a border so we can see it on the page, and then we've added a background image. And here's our URL to that background image. If I was writing this in brackets or another text editor, I would have that image stored locally somewhere, and I would include the URL to the directory where my images were. So we can see that rendering there, but it looks a little bit weird because that image was rather large. And it kind of doesn't fit this format very well. We can see that when I do change the width there, that the image is remaining the same in that it's been cropped. It's remaining at the same size. It's been cropped by the browser window. So let's add another property to our CSS rule here, so that we can make that image respond firstly to the box that it's in, but also to how the browser width changes. So we're going to add background size, and there's a background size in our list there. Oops. So we've got a few different variables that we can add to that property. The first one that I want to look at is background. Let's try background contain. See what that does. Excellent. So what that does is that it contains the image to either its height or width, depending on how wide the container is. You can see that when I shuffle around the browser, it's actually repeating that image. So that can be really useful for things like patterns, seamless kind of tiled patterns. I can remove the repeat by changing the background repeat property, setting that to none, I think, or no repeat. You can see now that it's not repeating, but it is responding to the size of the container there, which is definitely useful at times. Let's try another variable that we can add there. What about we try 100%? 100%. So now it's going to stretch the image so that it's going to completely fill the border edge to edge, and it doesn't matter how I stretch that browser width, it's going to deform the image to fit in there. So that could also be useful for responsive designs. The other thing, and probably the most useful variable for background size that I'm going to show you is the background size cover. And so that kind of crops the image inside the container there, the parent container. And so it doesn't matter what size the container is, the image is filling that container, but it's remaining in proportion, or the image is remaining in proportion. We can also add another property, background position, and I think we'll try center, and that will allow our image to stretch or to move from the center point within that container. Okay, so that's using background images in a responsive way.